about the experiences of Black people. And skin color has a lot to do with texture of hair. And so we hope that this will be not only an educational evening, but also a refreshing one somewhat. And we hope that this will be like pretty casual, not too serious, where we'll share stories, we'll learn from each other, and we will watch lots and lots of videos for sure. So we're just thankful to everyone who was able to make it. Another point that we'll make is during the discussion, we ask that non-Black folks give space to Black folks to share their stories and to have this moment. So if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Yeah, so we will jump in. You want to say a few words?
Yeah, just to give a brief history or just an explanation on what SOCA is. So SOCA stands for the Students of Caribbean and African Ancestry, and we're a club on SFU campus where we provide a safe space for Black students to come in and just share a space and have somewhere to meet other Black people, make friends, and just talk about their experiences on campus.
Yeah, thanks for that. So now I will attempt to share my screen again and see if this works. So bear with me, please. Okay, can everybody see the title page?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we will jump right in. So we will start off with a video, which I will talk briefly about afterwards. So please enjoy. Hope that the audio works.
Just took a little bit of work and a whole lot of love. Mwah. Are you ready to do this? All right, here we go. See? Now, wasn't that easy? See, now wasn't that easy? All it takes is some confidence and a willingness to get started. And even though I'm not there, I'll guide you through this. I want to thank my very special assistant, my daughter Zuri, for helping me with today's vlog, like always. And remember, the road ahead might look rough, but you can make the journey with a little bit of work and a whole lot of love. Mwah. Are you ready to do this? All right, here we go. First, you want to moisturize these beautiful thick curls with a leave-in conditioner, which will also help detangle the kinks. Now, part all your hair into sections. Clip it away. You're doing an amazing job. Yay, you did it! That was so much fun. I knew you could do it. Ride, gonna be alright, cause it's already alright. Ride, gonna be alright, cause it's already alright. Yeah. Happy days, happy days, happy days, happy days.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Mhm. Hi, guys. Sorry, we can't see you, so could you confirm if you can hear?
Yes,
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay. So that video was a short film called Hair Love, which actually won the Oscars for the Best Animated Short Film in the 2020 Oscars this year. So the film has a number of messages. Obviously, a Black father is learning how to do his daughter's hair. Obviously, there's the piece about cancer and what it does. But the thing that we really want to focus on is the embracing of the hair at the end of the day, that it was a feat. I mean, it was very dramatized in the film with the wrestling ring and everything. But we just want to take away from this the message that we want to leave you with after this event, which is embracing Black hair. So that was what that film was about. We'll talk about it briefly when we come to the section on embracing our hair at the end of the discussion. But yeah, we just wanted to mention that.
So from here on, we'll just go through a brief outline of what is to come and where we're headed after this video. So we're going to start off with just brief history on hair discrimination and the ways in which Black people have been discriminated against because of the texture of our hairs and how our hair is viewed by white people. Then we'll move on to the fight against oppression, where we'll just detail about how Black hair has been very symbolic in the struggle for our freedom and just has always been a way in which Black people like to express themselves. And often you find most of the activists that are involved in just the struggle for Black people's freedom are always embracing their hairs and always have the afros out. And then we'll go into the Black haircut industry and we'll talk about relaxers and we'll talk about just natural hair texture. And then we'll finish off with stories about how different individuals have learned how to embrace their own hair and in its natural state. Yeah. So we can start off with discrimination against Black hair.
Yeah. So I'll actually just present. So there we go. So we're going to talk about the roots of hair discrimination. So it goes back to slavery in the 1600s. Black people were enslaved and brought to the West forcefully. And one of the pre-slavery, one of the ways that Black people identified themselves, identified their tribes, identified even their marital status, their socioeconomic status within their communities was through the kinds of elaborate hairstyles they would wear. Different kinds of braids signify different things, and lengths signify different things. And during slavery, when Black people were brought over, their heads were actually shaved. So this was, covered as a with the excuse that it was to prevent the spread of lice in the hair in the slave ships that were coming over to the West. But what it did as well was that it erased their identity and took that away from them and caused them not even to be able to hand those traditions down to their children. And then moving on, we will talk about in 1786, the Tignon laws were instituted in the Spanish colony of Louisiana. And what it did was that it banned Black women from wearing their hair out publicly. Now, this was done to avoid attracting attention from white suitors, as well as to stop Black women from being a threat to white women. So Black women had to wear these head wraps that were called tignons, or tignon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's a Spanish colony. I don't speak very much Spanish. But yeah, that's another way that Black people have been discriminated against and not allowed to wear their hair. In this case, they were actually illegal if they went out with their hair showing. And then the last example we want to give is in 1950 in apartheid South Africa. The Population Registration Act was passed, and it required the classifications of individuals by race as part of the apartheid test, and how one of the ways that they identified individuals who were kind of racially ambiguous, they couldn't group them as either native, which meant Black, or white, which meant white. And so they were called colored. And so if you were colored and you wanted to maybe appeal your status to become white, you would have to go through this pencil test. And basically, it is what it sounds like. A pencil is placed in your hair. If it drops, you pass the test, and then you are put into the white category. If it does not, you are put into the native category, and you fail the test essentially. And this was a very direct connection between texture of hair and how people were treated in society. The opportunities they got, where they lived, it shaped their entire lives. So these are kind of the roots of care discrimination. And so on to more current examples. This is relatively recent. I believe it happened at the beginning of this year or at the end of last year, where DeAndre Arnold, he was a senior in high school in Texas, I believe, and he was suspended and was not allowed to attend his graduation walk across the stage because his dreadlocks were deemed to be against the dress code in his school district. Mind you, he had been growing these dreadlocks for very long and had been in the school. But what he did, instead of cutting them as the school demanded, was he just transferred to another school district. But sharing his story, he got a lot of attention and actually walked the red carpet. And I believe he went up to accept the award for the film that we just saw at the Oscars this February or this January. So this is a very not so uncommon example of how Black hair is policed, and that is in schools. So now Curry will talk about how it's policed elsewhere.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about examples from a book by Simone Brown, who is she's basically an author and educator at the University of Texas in Austin, and she's written a book called Dark Matters, looking into the surveillance of Blackness. And she details a few examples of how Black hair is discriminated against in the airport industry when people are flying and when going through security surveillance. So the first example that I drew out from her book was about Laura Adiel, who was traveling through Seattle Tacoma Airport when she was stopped, and a TSA agent mentioned that they had to examine anything that poops from the body in regards to her hair. And just thinking about that, I felt like that would be an offensive thing to say as something that just poops from your body. And yeah, that's one example of how Black bodies are surveilled. Another example is Timmery Shantae Nance, who wears her afro, and while going through airport security in San Antonio, her hair was patted down, and the TSA, and she was quite upset. And when she asked the TSA agent whether it's only African American women whose hairs are surveilled, they responded and said only certain kinds of ponytails or buns. And it's quite clear to see that it's only Black people because it's only our hairs that are ever in afros. And also to note that her example these examples are usually, like these instances of discrimination are done in public, and which strips the individual of just their privacy, or it lessens who you are and makes you feel as though certain parts of your body are not normal, or they just need to undergo additional screening, which doesn't leave you feeling really good about yourself. So yeah, and it's embarrassing. So Simone Brown concludes these examples as ways in which Black hair becomes a barrier when traveling, and feeds into the narrative of Black hair being viewed as dangerous. So for a long time, Black hair has often been viewed as, even in prisons, as a tool in which people can hide contraband or devices, guns, and which is not usually true. So just even going into more research that Simone Brown has carried out in her book, she details that a report released in 2000 by the US Government Accountability Office revealed that when navigating through airport security, Black women who are US citizens were 9 times more likely than white women who are US citizens to be x-rayed after being searched. and frisked and patted down, while another report entitled Better Targeting of Airline Passengers for Personal Searches could produce better results, found that these same X-ray results showed that these same Black women who are US citizens were less than half as likely to be found possessing contraband as white women US citizens while traveling through airport security. So these examples just lead us to question why Black women are still more likely to be targeted by airport security if the results show that they're less likely to be in possession of contraband than their white counterparts. Yeah, I don't know if we want to open the floor to people to give examples or to speak maybe about their own experiences if you can relate or if you have something to say. You can raise your hand and so you can see. Okay.
You want to share your experience? That you shared with me?
Yeah, I could share an experience that I encountered while traveling to Seattle on the bus. This was last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. I was on a bus to Seattle, and when we got to the border, I was the only black person on the bus, and I remember whenever you get to the border, you have to get out with your bags, and they have to go through security, show your visa, and basically answer questions about why you're visiting the US. So I remember that I was, after going through security and showing my bags and everything, I was then asked to step aside and go in for additional questioning, of which of course I was already sensitive because I knew I was already a black person. And I remember them keeping me on the side for as long as everyone else had gone through security and managed to get back onto the bus and wait. And by the time I was getting onto the bus, everyone was kind of only waiting for me, which I could just tell this is additional screening of how black bodies are just have to go through so much to just prove themselves. Yeah, that's my example.
Thanks for sharing.
I have a story.
Yeah? Please go
Yeah. I think it was the first time I went to Quebec. I was coming back and was just going through security with a couple of my friends that also lived in Vancouver. And it was 2 white girls and I was the only black one. And as I was going, I made a joke and I was like, watch, they're going to stop me. And then they're like, no, they're not. And then as I was going, they stopped me and I was like, wow. And I was laughing because I was just like, wow, I can't believe you proved my point. And they were just like I asked why I was being stopped and they're just like, oh, like, don't worry about it, just procedure and stuff like that. Then they checked through my bag and stuff like that. And eventually they let me go. But my friends literally walked in and out and like I was patted down and whatever. And they were actually like, wow, like this is actually insane. And I was like, yep. So that's it.
I also have a story to share. It's not me, it's my cousin who experienced this. But so she went to Montreal for school. She's actually originally from Belgium. And so when she crossed the border, she was taking the train to go to DC. And this has happened multiple times, actually. But she would always get pulled aside and then they would question her, like, why do you know English so well? And she went to European school, so she would explain that to them, and she said, it's my second language or her third language, I think. But then they would just always ask her, like, are you an illegal immigrant? Are you here illegally? And she has her passport, she has her student visa, and she's legally obviously eligible to be here and to travel. But it was always that, and it's always her that gets pulled like out of the line, and the same like you're saying. And it's just, again, another perfect example of like, oh, you're black, so there's no way you could speak proper English, or whatever their assumptions are. So yeah.
I think just to tie off those examples is just to show how black people, black hair, black body features are often like associated with negative connotations. Like oftentimes we are always on suspects for, I mean, the most trivial things, you know. And it really devalues like your own human experience and makes you wonder. I know for me, when that happened the first time, I was like, wow, you know, being the only black person on the bus and then being stopped and having to make the whole bus wait, you know, it just didn't feel right. But this is real life for us. Yeah. Moving on.
Yes. So we're going to move on to how historically Black people have fought. And we will talk about more than just hair. We'll talk about civil rights and so on, but we will kind of show how the fight for Black hair and just for Black existence and without shame and without oppression, you know, has mirrored the fight for rights. Basically, it's all connected. So this is a really brief timeline. There's a lot that is in here, but yeah. So basically, from slavery, which happened first. Last year was actually the 400th year anniversary of the first Black slaves reaching the United States. So I believe it was Jamestown, Virginia. So 1619 was when slavery kind of began in terms of people arriving. And then in 1862, the Emancipation Proclamation was made by Abraham Lincoln. Black people were free. In 1916, Marcus Garvey, who is known to have said the phrase, remove the kings from your hair and remove the kings from your mind, not your hair. He established the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and that was an association that just really pushed Black nationalism and kind of the return to Africa narrative. After that, soon after that, in the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance. So this occurred in, you guessed it, Harlem, New York. And it occurred when slaves, like emancipated slaves from the South, moved to the North for greener pastures, because in the South, Jim Crow laws were very much still in order. They were very much still functioning. And so they moved to the North where racial tensions weren't as strong as in the South. And this led to a burst of creative and intellectual, like cultural, just a burst of all those different things of Black intellectualism and culture and art in Harlem. So that's where a lot of the people, you know, like Billie Holiday, Louis Armstrong, Langston Hughes, all kind of started out, was in Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. And this not only gave Black people a voice, but Black people began to actually shape American culture, especially media and entertainment and those kinds of things. So that was a big step towards Black people standing up and just being loud and proud. Then in the 1930s and 1950s, the Negritude movement was born. Now this was born mostly within French-speaking countries such as Martinique, Senegal, so Caribbean and African countries. And it was more of a literary movement where, again, a lot of Black nationalism was pushed, Pan-Africanism was promoted, and it was influenced by the Harlem Renaissance, actually. And it was a framework of literary theory and cultivation of Black consciousness. So after that, in the 1930s, the Rastafari movement began in Jamaica, although some might argue that it began before that. But the 1930s was when an Ethiopian king was crowned, and that was seen to have been the fulfillment of a prophecy made by Marcus Garvey, that there would be like a Black savior, similar to what is believed in Christianity, Jesus being the savior. In this case, it was that Ethiopian king who was crowned being the savior. So that also obviously influenced Blackness and Black people taking up space in the world. In the 1960s, the civil rights movements were very much alive. A lot of them started using the phrase Black is beautiful to promote the Black acceptance, acceptance of our not only physical characteristics, but all of ourselves, our African roots. And arguably, that's when the first natural hair movement was born. So what we're seeing these days in the early 2000s, the modern natural hair movement, is just an iteration of what happened in the 1960s. In the 1970s, however, a lot of these activists were forced underground. So the activists were sporting afros, and the afro was seen as a symbol of Black resistance, Black power, and so a lot of them were forced underground. So between the 1970s and the early 2000s is when we got like the Jerry curl. People started doing fades and all these different hairstyles, influenced a lot, of course, by film, television, music, and then we are here today. I would say we're still in the modern natural hair movement. It's still very much going on and very promoted by social media, in my opinion, at least for me. So next up is just a video of Kathleen Cleaver, who was a Black Panther. She was part of the Black Panther Party in the 60s, and this is what she has to say about wearing our natural hair.
This brother here, myself, all of us were born with our hair like this, and we just wear it like this because it's natural. Because the reason for it, you might say, is like a new awareness among Black people that their own natural appearance, physical appearance, is beautiful and it's pleasing to them. For so many years, we were told that only white people were beautiful. Only straight hair, light eyes, light skin was beautiful, and so Black women would try everything they could to straighten their hair and lighten their skin to look as much like white women. This has changed because Black people are aware, and white people are aware of it too, because white people now want natural wigs. They want wigs like this. Dig it? Isn't it beautiful? All right. Black is beautiful. Bring it.
Yeah, so shall we maybe talk about that? We can jump into maybe the history of that. If anyone has anything to share, any information to share, any comments to make before we jump into more of the modern natural hair movement.
Let me put my video on. I think it's so important to see people who look like you and just to have that kind of representation and have women with so different types of textured natural hair kind of being portrayed in the media. Because for me personally, like I was born in Nigeria, and it wasn't until I got to Canada, I've been relaxing my hair since since I started doing my hair. I've been relaxing it. And it wasn't until I was 14 that I saw my cousin with her natural hair. And I was like, oh my goodness, I love your weave. Like, where did you get it? And she's like, girl, like, this is my hair. And I'm like, what do you mean this is your hair? Like, I was just so much awe. I thought it was so beautiful. And she was just like, well, your hair could look like this too if you stop like relaxing it. And I was so confused. Like, relaxing was just like it was like getting my hair braided. It was just procedure to just go and relax my hair, you know? And I think that's just really sad. And it just kind of goes to show that even in Nigeria, you know, like those standards are so global. And it's so important that I start seeing other people who look like me, and like that's kind of what my cousin did for me. And like I saw her and she was wearing her afro with like, she wears a lot of color and like these big earrings and stuff, so she was just looking so good and I was just in so much awe. And I think it's so important to show Black as being beautiful so that little girls like me, or like I was, can appreciate that and have something to look up to.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a pretty similar story, where I feel like my entire life, my mother permed her hair, I think up until I was about 11. And I just remember one day, I say one day, but she tells me it was a slow evolution. But one day, someone walks up and she's like African print, her hair, like her afro is out. And I feel like that was a moment where I was like, that's who I want to be. And such a turning point for me. And I've written about it like in every essay I can get it into because I think it really changed my life. So I grew up in Ghana. I was born and raised in Ghana and came to Canada 5 years ago. And before I came, I was in a boarding school and you had to cut your hair really short. And so like natural hair wasn't an option. You just like basically shaved your head, right? So I feel like when I came to Canada and my hair started growing out, like it wasn't even a question about whether I was going to let it grow in its natural state or not, because like my mother had an afro, and so I feel like what you brought up is a very important point. Like not only seeing it in media or seeing it in like political spaces where people are being activists and fighting for rights, but seeing it in like the women in your household, the men in your household, like the people who matter the most to you, I feel like means a lot, especially when you're young and you're coming up. Because I think it's even a little bit messed up that like we have to say Black is beautiful. It's kind of like Black Lives Matter.
It's like we have to prove our worth.
Exactly.
We should normalize it. Like it should be something that people are used to seeing because this is who we are.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. Would anyone else like to share anything on that? Would you like to share anything, Kirby?
I feel like I relate to your experience of growing up. I'm originally from Kenya, and I've been born and raised there, and came there 5 years ago, just like Denise. And I remember for most of my life, all of my life, my mom's hair has also been relaxed, and she started relaxing our hair when we were teenagers, my sisters and I. And just I think when I moved to Canada, the evolution to accepting myself and my natural hair has been also slow, and it's come from seeing other Black girls just like me embracing their own natural hair. And it, like, for me, I feel like it's become a form of self-love and self-care, just attending to my own hair, and also just a way to embrace who I really am on the inside. So
yeah, really good. Does anyone else want to share anything? Not many people are sharing their videos, but if you're comfortable. I forgot to say this in the beginning, but this is being recorded and will be shared later on as well. So if you came in a little late or you weren't able to catch everything, or if you know someone who wasn't able to be here but wanted to be here, that'll be available on our social media to share. But yeah, would anyone like to share anything about anything at all about Black hair?
So I would like to share. I'm not gonna show myself because I look rough right now, but my voice is enough. For me, growing up, I didn't growing up from maybe lower grades, elementary to high school. I had my natural hair, and then when you had graduation, that was where everyone would relax their hair because you're going to be like a woman, so now you're ready for straight hair, and it was like that rite of passage. So as soon as you got to high school, not a lot of people had natural hair, so you're always having your hair straight. And it was not until I came to Canada, and then I think probably it's conditioning too, because like my mom, when she had to comb my hair, I have really thick hair, so this is like it was an event. You had to sit down, find a movie, get 2 combs. One was gonna be broken and the other one survives to the end. So I think over time you think you couldn't manage your hair, right? You think it's too hard to manage on your own. But now, like now that I'm natural again, I found out that it's just like anything. You have to like learn how to deal with it, learn different tricks and how to manage your own hair and love yourself with your own hair, because I think the world already wants you to do differently. So you just being yourself is like an act of resistance and self-love, because the world already wants you to hate it, right? So like that's my condition, is like anytime I think to myself like, oh, you look so crazy with your, like when I don't have my hair all combed up or anything, I think to myself, why do I think my hair looks messy, you know? And think to
Right.
myself, actually, this is the hair that grows out of my head. This is how it's supposed to look. So I think it's just a matter of undoing and then also relearning too.
I love that. Yeah.
I have a comment.
Mhm.
Right now, I mean, I know y'all can't see my hair, but I have like an afro texture hair. And I definitely remember, I relate to Monique when she's saying like, growing up, you're just, anytime something fancy was coming up, you were, I mean, I was made to straighten my hair. I didn't have a choice, but I also thought it was like, that was the right thing to do. And I think it was around when I was like 13, 14, when I started getting really annoyed. I was just like, my head hurts. I'm tired. I don't want to do it. Like, I don't need to look that good. I was willing to take like comfort over looks, and I still thought the straightened hair and stuff was like looking better and stuff. But it's just been interesting seeing my younger sister. She's now 12, trying to navigate all that, and like I'm really happy I could be like a voice of support to just reassure her, like, yeah, you're good, you're fine, because she didn't grow up, and neither did I, among like predominantly Black communities, or people with just like hair like ours. So it's just been a very interesting journey trying to get her, and I don't live with her either, so trying to get her to understand, like, I know our family conditioned us a certain way, not just our family, but society as well as our families can try to like send us a certain message, but it's not true, basically. Just like, we gotta love what comes out. Like, how come everyone else gets to wear what comes out of their head naturally and we don't, you know? And I brought that up. I literally got into an argument about it. Very respectful conversation. It wasn't an actual argument with, you know, Black parents, but I said that to my parents. I was like, why do other people get to like just wear what comes out of their head and we don't? Like, and they kind of just didn't have a reply, and I got to wear my hair natural to that event. But this is me at like 20, so I understand it's like really, really hard when we're younger. I struggle with it too.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think.
I'll also share an experience if I can.
Yes, please.
I'll basically share a high school experience. So I'm from Zimbabwe, and growing up in high school, I went to a private school. So basically, private schools in Zimbabwe follow the British school system, and that includes rules, code of conduct, and how to wear your hair to school. And just growing up, I grew up thinking that my hair was subpar and my true texture needed to be hidden. I didn't have the opportunity to understand my curl pattern. And even like going through school, I don't recall a teacher ever encouraging the acceptance of natural hair. And my hair throughout high school was always chemically straightened. It was either that or getting braids all the time, and never let my hair see the light of day. Yeah, as I said before, I didn't have the freedom to find out how to care for my natural curl pattern and what hairstyles I could have with my natural type of hair. And I also feel like we're taught that the only acceptable form our hair should be in was that which submitted to Eurocentric standards. So basically anything that hid, you know, your natural hair texture. And looking back and just thinking about it, what upset me the most was how I watched my white counterparts get away with breaking the rules, such as, you know, getting messy hair bands. They were allowed more diverse haircuts, fringes, and yet with Black girls, we couldn't have our natural hair out. So just thinking about that, I also see how like white girls in high school got all the preferential treatment. So yeah, and as Black girls, you know, our hair was regarded messy, unkempt, dirty, and, you know, as some type of a fashion statement, or simply put, as other people said, you know, your hair was just ugly. Yeah, and I think it's only now that I'm in university where I'm appreciating, you know, my natural hair and learning how to care for my natural hair. Yeah, so that's all I have to share.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah, so I think that I think we'll just move on for the sake of time. Any guys? Yes. I see you, Giovanni.
I'd share. In Jamaica, I didn't have this hair because there's always rules against growing your hair. Like in high school, you can't grow your hair across more than, what was the rule, 2 centimeters or something like that. And if you do, you get 1 a demerit or 2 a suspension. It's like so it's like demerits like accumulate, so it's like a form of punishment, and you get a suspension. So like nobody tries to grow the hair, and if you grow your hair consistently and keep breaking rules, it becomes something that you know get characterized as a troublemaker and stuff like that. And it's just it's a self-policing coming from colonial law in the past, and it continues into this day. I know that there's much more conversations around it now, but yeah, when I came here and start locking my hair, okay, so I have a really bad did I say this publicly? Okay, I will. So I really have a bad excuse for going locks, and the excuse was I did not want to spend too much money to be, because you know, Black men like barber, like that's a whole experience, you know, going in. But in Jamaica, it's $5 to trim. While I come here, it's $25 to trim. And then when, so in the first year, I was like, oh, you know, financial decision, and then I decided to like grow my hair, lock my hair. My mom was doing it, and then at one point my partner started doing it. So like, but it just got so liberationary. But there was one thing, like, you know, connecting with people back home, or with older folks back home who more traditional. I remember just like feeling really bad, just how they say, oh, you need to cut your hair, you don't look good again, or I'm sorry, you don't look as good again. It's just a patois. And it's just something that, you know, you kind of battle with initially, but then I kind of love it so much now, except that some of it falling out. But yeah, that's my experience.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There's one more person that wanted to share, Lisa Jane.
Hi, thank you. I'll put my video so it doesn't look. And thank you for everyone for sharing these stories, and thank you to Giovanni for posting on Facebook. I'll kind of touch base on my own personal experience. So I'm originally from Ghana, but I was born in Norway, and then I grew up in Vancouver, and I'm currently in Calgary. So I did have, my upbringing was surrounded predominantly white. So kind of how the evolution of hair and how the media portrays what is acceptable and non-acceptable, especially for Black women. Something that I've personally experienced, which I'm sure many of you as well, when it comes into the professional work setting, especially to even look